Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the Careers in Music and Technology lecture series. Very happy to have Jason Reinier here today to speak with you, founder of Earprint Immersive. Jason's done sound environments, soundscapes for institutions such as the Exploratorium, the Oakland Museum, and the Met, I believe? Yes. Yeah. And then also, as a composer, has done some amazing works, including one of my favorites, the One Day of Sound, where he collected recordings made by people all around the world and presented a kind of stitched together beautiful piece on NPR. What day was that? It was
the first ever National Noise Awareness Day, and I will play a little bit of it.
That's wonderful. Okay, thank you. And then also, Jason has been involved a little bit with electronic arts, I believe, with working on sound design for some of the Sims games. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jason Reinier.
Thank you for everybody, and I just want to say thank you to Chris. Chris and I have known each other for a long time, and I think we first met when you were at Mills, and she was in the incredible media arts program there. And I've also known Brenda Hutchinson for many years from working at the Exploratorium, and I was very fortunate, actually, a couple of years ago to come here often because my son was at a high school, the Nueva High School, and they were in the building their first year, right up by the main student lounge. So I came over here and I knew where to park and I got all that down, and I just love this place. So it's really great to be here. And I'm kind of interested in doing sort of a whirlwindy sort of share of what I've done. And I just want to start by saying I was an electronic music. I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in electronic music. So how many of you have a similar thing or are working on it? So yeah, it's one of those degrees that's like really great while you're doing it, and it's really fun, and then you're kind of left at that point of graduation saying to yourself, what do I do now? And that's a very fun question, and it's a very kind of like, it leads to lots of different questions about what is it you're really doing? What is it you really care about? And so I feel like what's driven me throughout my entire career is a sense of not selling out, not doing anything I didn't really believe in, and trying to apply something that I have that I don't think a lot of people have. It's a small group of people, but it's the first sense is my ear. Bravo, yes, we are the ear people. And there's many words that I like to use. There's many ways I like to talk about sound. And I'm going to share a few of those today because the lexicon of sound vocabulary it's small compared to light vocabulary or other phenomena. So I want to share that kind of my love of sound and how it's just woven me through a very interesting set of things. I also want to talk about what's your measure of success. If you're in this field where you're like, what is meaningful? What's really important to you? What's important to the world? How do you balance what you want to do creatively, artistically, and financially, of course, you need to survive, with the forces of good and what's important to our lives and to the world, so community, all the things that matter. And anyway, I'm going to just sort of riff on it and ask any questions at any time. I'm going to try to go through it in, I guess I have about an hour. I don't want to bore you with too much detail. So anyway, I'm Jason. www.earprint.com is where I put my stuff. I also have a number of other URLs. Last year I took out a bunch of URLs because I have all these bigger ideas. So because it's almost like real estate, it's like I have this idea. It's a URL now, and you have to pay for it, and that makes it into a thing. And once you have to pay for it, then the next year you have to decide, do you want to pay for it again, even though you haven't done anything with it? But it's like a stake in the ground. So anyway, I'll describe some of them. But first I want to talk about Earprint. How did this name come across? That's my Earprint. And it's really easy to do. I don't know how many of you have noticed your Earprint. Raise of hands. It's on your pillow. Forensic uses it to track killers and other riffraff because it's unique. Like whatever's going on right here, for me, is very much my ear print, and everyone has one. So it's really interesting. It's sort of an identification of your, and people are using it now in the HRTF world and the head tracking. It's like there's an ear, there's something important about our ear and how we hear. So anyway, I like to say I leave my ear print everywhere I listen, and my first ear print was one of these moments where I was walking around, and I was taught by a man named Stephen Scott at Colorado College. Do anybody know Stephen Scott? He's a composer, and he taught us all how to appreciate jazz, record, make musique concrète on tape, and also he wrote music for the inside of the grand piano. So I'll share that with you. But anyway, he taught me how to listen, and he loved to listen to insides of things. So like, what does this tabletop sound like? And you just press your ear against it, and of course, nothing really going on there, but it can be very interesting. You have to take risks. And so I like to go listen to gas meters. Does anybody else have this? You know what I'm talking about? Gas meters, they're great. They make very minute whistling and hissing sounds that you can hear outside. But when you press your ear against them, they become these symphonies of gurgles and almost like voices speaking. So imagine them all having a voice. And I love to go around and listen to them. So I put my ear against this one really beautiful gray surface of this gas meter, pulled away, and there was a perfect ear print. It was like, I was amazed. I was like, wow. So then I decided that this was going to be the name that I wanted to use, and I made a picture of my ear. That's my ear print from, I don't know how long ago, but still the same. Now I have a couple other words. My latest, and I would call the word sonostalgia, it's a word that I sort of fashioned out of solastalgia, which is related to nostalgia, but it's different. But sonostalgia is really sonic longing. I would define it. And what it means is the combination of what you listen to, what you hear, and what it means to you. So it's not just like, oh, I'm listening to music. I'm listening to the sounds of the wind. It's more like I'm hearing this incredible mixture of ingredients, the circulation of leaves and the qualities of sound. And the qualities have emotional components, and that makes me feel a certain way. And it's also connecting to memory and to history and to legacies. So it's like we're connected to this. Sound is a connection to memory. Sound is a connection to experience. And sonostalgia is really what connects me, is a word that expresses that, and also is sort of an umbrella for everything I've done, I realize. Everything that I've done is related to listening and meaning of sound. And Sound Museum, I talked to Chris about this when I met her last. I'm currently, and I'm going to say this because I haven't said it very often in public, I'm currently planning to build a sound museum. And you may ask, what is a sound museum? And I'm not going to tell you right now. But I want you to think about it, because I would love to engage with a group of people from this place or places all over, talk about sonostalgia and talk about Sound Museum, and develop what that could be and how it could really provide a resource we don't have. This doesn't exist. So I'm working on creating it. But anyway, those are just big ideas. Let's go on to what I want to do first. And this is kind of an active thing, and it's about listening and a way of thinking about sound and using your mind's ear. We're not going to listen to anything. We're going to actually just listen with the memory of our sound. And we're going to think about sounds that we love, think about how they made us feel, think about describing qualities of sound, what words we use, what's the meaning of those sounds, how can we create stories with sound, and then spatial audio, the atmosphere of sounds, and then also one thing that I like to think of is what's the point of view of the ear. There is no word for point of view. View means technically visual, right? When you look at the view, but there's not a word for point of ear. And I've always wondered. So I like to make up words, so I made up a word for it. Earmersive. So it's like these are the things that we are challenged with the sound people, is there is a point of view. There's light, like when you get into light and you study light and you become a producer of light things like graphics and signage and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole lexicon of reference materials that identify what qualities of light are and how they work, and sound doesn't have that, really. It's for us here, we're investigating it in scholarly terms and personal commitment to it, but most people don't have a very good vocabulary of sound. So I'm just interested in that, and there's an activity. So when I think of sound nostalgia, I like to say 3 questions. It just comes down to 3 things. What's your favorite sound? And we're not talking about like, it's in your mind. It's your mind's ear. Think back. Think into the quality of your life and sounds that you love to hear. We could come up with also the same question, what sounds do you hate? And we're just not going to deal with that right now. We're going to deal with sounds you love. And the question is, what is a sound you love? How does it make you feel? What does it mean to you? And then the exercise is using descriptive words and trying to actually capture the nature of that thing, the essence and the qualities of the sounds. So this is a journal. I do this activity with people a lot because I love to just interact with people around it. And if you have something to write on, I'd love for you to just use this as a guide and improvise if you want, but just kind of think about a sound and follow these things, and then we'll just go around and just share a couple. I don't want to take too much time on it, but this is so key to what we're doing. And we'll be quiet while we do it. So we'll do it for about a minute. Let's just do it for maybe 2 minutes. Yeah? Everybody have something to write on? Use your mind. It's okay. Okay. Start. Start wrapping it up. Are you guys ready? No? Okay. I like how quiet it is. How are we doing? I want to keep moving, so I'm going to just put your pencils down. And if you feel kind of inspired, raise your hand and share the sound. And if you don't have to, but I'd love to just hear somebody's favorite sound.
My sound is my cat purring, laying near me. It makes me feel connected. It makes me feel comfortable. What it means to me is that my cat is feeling comfortable and feeling loved. I describe it as guttural, rhythmic, comforting. I can't make it sound.
See, but it's like all those things. I'm relating because I have a cat, and the cat comes to me every day and sits on my chest, and it's like there's nothing like it. And so I can relate to that, and beautiful. That's really a beautiful sense of where the sound connects to everything else. Anybody else want to share? Yes. I can't see you. Go ahead.
I like the sound of the BART train,
Mhm.
the big BART and under the tunnel. I also like the sound of the new Caltrain when like they break and it like pierces your ears.
All right.
They make me feel crazy a little bit. I just like how it sounds like when I'm in the BART train and I can hear it. I like how it's interesting because I'm like traversing through space and you normally don't hear sound like that.
Mm.
I don't know.
Oh, that's great. there's a whole bunch of stuff going on too physically as sounds move and your ear moves, the Doppler effect and all these other, and that's one way of knowing that you're moving is how the sound changes. So I'm going to go ahead and share your sounds with each other later. I'd love to hear more, and I just really appreciate the time to focus on that, because that's what it's about. Is really, for me, it's about like really participating in sound in an active, kind of meaningful way and finding connections. And then I'm going to go now, just kind of review, what does Earprint do? All these things, soundscapes. Let me just say I'm a musician, okay? So I started as a musician, played piano, composing, went to college, wanted to be a scientist, said, nah, I don't want to be a scientist, I'm going to be a musician. Got a degree, went through all the music theories and such, and ended up doing electronic music. And I've ended up making a company that now does sound design. Is it music? That's a good question. I think so, because I became clear. Once I recorded sound on and I listened to the inside of that gas meter and I made a piece of music concrete, I was like, this is it. This is the thing. There's all these sounds. Their sounds are music. My instruments are still great. I love to play them. But there's greater information out there. So I got really deeply into soundscapes, and I chose public spaces because you can get jobs in all sorts of industry. But what are you doing? Are you supporting? Anyway, you have to think about what's behind it. And I've always I chose to work in places that are museums, zoos, galleries, public places all over the world, because I don't want to be sitting in a studio just making music for ads. I tried it. Didn't like it that much. I don't want to be doing things that are supporting things that I don't believe in. So I believe in education. I believe in these things. That's why I chose the direction I went in. How did I get there? All these different jobs, and I'm sure you all know there's jobs in music, theater, dance, film, games, bands, radio, performance art, and others. As an engineer, there's all these different things you can do. And I've done a lot of them. Put my hand in, tried this. It's kind of just to get access to the different environments and the different activities that you do. But it sort of starts to steer you into like, this is what I like more. This is what I don't necessarily like. And so I feel like I just wove through, and I'm going to just give you a whirlwind pass through my experience. This is, again, I did a class at CCA, and this was their thing, right? They handed it to students. They said, you can do soundscape design in these fields. And that's a lot of stuff, right? But the next question is, how? Like, how do you do soundscape and religion? Human psychology, interesting. Ecology, the city. So anyway, this is like a large field, lots of stuff. I'm not going to talk about all that stuff, but it's just to point out, like, you go into sound, you get a degree in electronic music, you go into sound, there's a lot of opportunity. It's not like you go sign up and find the job through LinkedIn. You have to do a lot of creative manipulation of things and your expectations to get what you want. This is just to kind of go over, I've been doing, this is just a summary. I don't even need to read it, because I think I've said it all. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So, I'm in college. I was at the Colorado College in Colorado Springs, Colorado, because I went to school for geology. And I went to Colorado to go study geology. And then once I got there, I'm like, I don't want to do geology. Anybody have that experience? Like, there's something else you want to do, and it's like, am I going to do this thing I don't want to do for the rest of my life? And chemistry is really hard. Music theory is really hard too, equally hard. But I chose music, and I ended up at Colorado College, and this group that's here, this is one of the most outstanding things. I was talking about measures of success. Like, okay, how did I measure the joy and the success of my college career in music? I performed live at the Sydney Opera House on a live broadcast with 10 people playing the inside of the grand piano. And at that point in my life, I was like, this is great. This is really fun. I'm traveling. I'm working with this incredible collaborative group. You stand and play all those little strings and stuff, and you wave your hands like this, and you're creating the sound of the soundboard. The music is coming right at you, and you're with 10 people making this sound, and it's just fabulous. So that was very much a very high point in my college career. And then I I also graduated from my college, and I got a job as an electronic music assistant teacher, basically, for 3 years. So it was like working in an incredible lab with this guy who was the composer who put this trip together, and teaching classes in electronic music. I had, it was a dream life from when I graduated for about 3 years. And then I realized I got to go do something else because I didn't want to stay in Colorado. And I came to San Francisco, and this is where I ended up. Brenda, you'll remember that place. And Chris. And people, this is the Exploratorium in the old building. And this place was just amazing. It was just the most wonderful environment. I landed there. I actually worked in the store first. I was the inventory supervisor of toys, and I had a ball. But as I became an assistant to the Artist in Residence program, I started working in the Speaking of Music series. I just kind of wove my way into all these interesting things that were happening and hung out with some amazing people who I started to collaborate with, one of whom was Chico McMurtry, who built musical sculptures. He called it anamorphics. And these are all hydraulically run instruments that play themselves or things. So you've got chime body, and you got the drummer over here. And anyway, this is like really cool, very deeply interesting art, and it all makes sound. So I was like, okay. Did a lot of live performance. Sometimes hanging upside down, painted blue. It was fun. This is also a person I met at the Exploratorium, was a man named Oliver DeChico. He also ran Mobius Music, which was one of the prime music recording small studios in San Francisco. He built it from the ground up. He's an amazing engineer, architect, and he builds these instruments. And at one point, it was at the Exploratorium, and friends of mine were playing in the group, and I just said, hey, can I sit in? And I sat in, and it was like, I instantly felt this sense of like, this is what I want to do. And so I got together with this group, we started playing and performing. And all of these instruments are very unique, but you can play them in all these different ways. And I played with this group for 20 years. And we gigged, we did all sorts of stuff. This is Oliver in the middle. That's me playing the sirens, which is those are filled with water, and they whistle when you move them, those big U-shaped things. And this over here is called For Reals, but it's a long tape loop that we play into, and then it kind of just keeps repeating itself. But anyway, really experimental, really cool stuff, really out there. We didn't make any money. None of this stuff was about money at that point. But I was surviving and enjoying my life in the 90s in San Francisco, which was a great time for, and Chris, you'll remember this, new music. I was producing concerts at the Oakland Museum called Music for Frogs, Creatures, Birds, Frogs, and Other Creatures. And I believe, Brenda, you had pieces in it, and Chris, you came and played your kelp horns. And a lot of people were involved in this community, and it was just great. It was like a really wonderful community. There's just so much going on in the Bay Area. Again, a few more pictures, performance. This is a car that was in a play, word of mouth performed at San Francisco Theater Group, but Oliver built it. And then there's me. I did theater, and I got probably again, measures of success. I was a Foley guy in a play at the Magic Theater in San Francisco, and the set was completely blank. The actors come out, they're on the set, and they're doing their thing, and they're acting and making gestures that are sound, like guns, and driving a truck, but they have nothing. They're just standing there, and I'm basically making all their sounds. So this thing over here with the wheel is a truck I made out of a large tray with a bunch of stuff in it, and I banged it around, and over here to the right, at one point, there's a big fight, and I fell on the ground because I did all the fight sounds, and it was in a shower. It was all these details, and then I had to fall on the ground to really seal the deal. And that was, it was very physical Foley work. And one night I did this performance, and I forgot to lie on the ground. I forgot to go down. And I was like, nobody clapped. No, I mean, I had gotten this incredible response from this audience doing this job, but when I didn't totally commit to it and throw myself on the ground, people were like, sort of, not so, this, whatever. But when I threw myself on the ground, people were like, yes. And it's just like the way that you have to commit to anything. It's like, Throw yourself on the ground if you have to. Do what you have to do to really make it, it's like you want to give a gut punch when you can. Sometimes it's a little tickle. But anyway, Robert here is a critic, but he said, Reinier is an endless font of playfully creative sound in the SF Chronicle. And I was like, wow. I don't need any more. That's pretty good. I'll use that. And it really just describes what I had to do, because my job was to make all these sounds for everybody. But another measure of success is like, okay, cool, theater. I got some awards. I did that. I did a lot of theater. I did sound for Magic Theater plays, and it was thrilling. It wasn't high paying, but at that point, like $1,000 for 6 weeks of work was pretty good. And then Chris mentioned this piece, Day of Sound. I was inspired. Do you remember the series Day in the Life photography? I used to look at those. I love those. They're like, really interesting portraits of places and time. And I thought, this has to happen in sound. And I kind of backlogged that question, put it in my drawer of ideas until Sound Culture 96 came along, which, Chris, you might remember too. Were you in that? And it was the San Francisco-wide Festival of Sound. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that piece. And I got, somehow, this is 96, so it was before the internet was really a thing. It's after Al Gore had just invented it, if you remember that. But people weren't using it like they use it now. There was no way to connect with people over broad distances. But I connected with 50 people all over the world, and they sent me their tapes and cassette, DAT, and it was just cassette and DAT. And I made this piece. And it was a CD-length piece. It was a 30-minute performance piece. And then I did a 4-minute piece. This is the first thing we're going to play, if I can. Nope. Dang it. That's what I did next, but we don't want to look at that. Okay. Come on.
This is All Things Considered. I'm Robert Siegel.
And I'm Linda Wertheimer. In February of this year, Jason Reinier put out a call to sound recordists all over the world: go outside on February 17th and tape record what you hear. Record the sounds around you. About 50 people did. They sent him their tapes from Sonoma, California, from Wellington, New Zealand, from Cologne, Germany, from Tokyo, Japan, and Plainview, Colorado. Jason Reinier then mixed the sounds together and produced a sonic picture of that one day. Here's what February 17th sounded like across the world.
Time from 12 midnight, whole day to 12 midnight.
Jason Reinier's audio portrait of February 17, 1996. The material was collected by more than 50 sound recordists around the world. Today is the first ever Noise Awareness Day, sponsored by the League for the Hard of Hearing in New York City.
So that's basically like, a clock a day all over. The sounds were recorded in various places, and I said, sorry, I said, don't edit them, just 1 minute. All I want is a minute. And they were sent to me in various forms, and I just laid them out on a Pro Tools track and cross-faded them. So in a way, it's kind of like the music of serendipity. And the sounds that came were just like, I had no idea what they were going to be, and I was just I put all my trust in this idea, and the outcome, the reason why, there's a couple of things going on here. Is measure of success. They said Jason Reinier like how many times, right? And I'm like, people are calling me, hey, I heard your thing, Jason Reinier, and I'm like, okay. But the most important thing is not that I did it, but that it was done, and this was played on NPR at a time when they were not playing sounds. I mean, this was like a really interesting thing because they played just sounds in their prime time. And I'm like, it was a milestone of just getting that kind of thing on the air. So again, it's like just an idea, and I've done other ones. I did one for the millennium, so it was 12 noon to 12 noon on December 31st, 1999 to 2001. And that was really interesting because you get these kind of nature sounds and things like that, and then they finally go into party time, and it's all fireworks and party time, and then it goes back to nature. And it's just like, and there was no Y2K disaster. So it was good. And that piece was picked up by the New York Times and put in the time capsule that will be opened in the year 3000 out in front of the American Natural History Museum in New York. And all of this stuff happened just by word of mouth, just by people interested in sound and people wanting to find out what's going on. And so this is like just sort of the network of sound things that are collaborative. People are really, there's so many people who love to record. And now it's become a huge thing. So the World Forum of Acousticology does a sound day like this every year. It's not unique. I like to say that my piece was fairly unique at the time, but now it's just very ubiquitous. There's lots of ways you can access this kind of a library of sound. So anyway, I want to keep moving because I'm afraid I won't get to this. So anyway, The Sims, like another measure of success, it's called a AAA game because it's so popular. How many people played The Sims? How many people know how they speak? Right? They do what's called Simlish, and my job was to cast and direct gibberish for years, for 5 years. And I nearly lost my mind because it's very serious business. You think, it's so serious that people laugh in the studio constantly. And one of the producers actually broke a rib because it was so funny. Because we hire comedians, and you're sitting there, and they're doing the sounds of The Sims, and you're just like, how does this happen? And it's hilarious. But as a job, it was incredibly difficult. I don't know how many people know about the ethics of gaming, but not a career choice that I would recommend. I'm only going to say that once. I had a good time, and to be honest, I used to have people from my kids' school come to EA because it was such a big deal to go to EA, and I'd tell them, I'd say, I use every skill that I learned in college. My electronic music degree, I put to use all the skills, recording skills, composition skills, just general sound design and flow and all this stuff. It was really useful for the video game industries, and there's lots of jobs. Question?
For like the ethics of video games, are you referring to like crunch time and stuff like that?
Yes, and it's hellish. I mean, so we used to work on salary during crunch time, at least 100 hours a week. And you weren't paid anymore. You weren't paid anything different. You just had to do it. And then supposedly you'd get some time off when we were done. But I was playing with that band, right? And I'm at work, and we had a deadline, and I'm working. And I'm like, see you guys, I'm going to go to my rehearsal. It's 8 o'clock. I go to my rehearsal for 2 hours, and then I come back to work. That's the only way I could do anything. And people were there till 3 in the morning. People would sleep in sleeping bags. And actually, while I was there was a civil lawsuit came out against EA on our team and I think other teams, but that basically made it so that we had to have overtime. So it was an interesting time to be in the industry. But it's a culture of that. I also had a kid, wasn't very kid-friendly. But anyway, I'm not poo-pooing it at all. I'm just saying the reality of jobs, you don't know what you're getting into until you actually do it. And you really need to know, do you want a quality of life? Is that important? Or would you rather do this? Those are all decisions you can make. And it pays well. It uses all your skills. There was something really beautiful about that. And I loved The Sims. I thought it was I had nothing against the game itself. I loved it. And Will Wright, who made The Sims, was a really interesting person. I also worked on the Urbs, which was another weird game, but it was urban Sims. So they had these weird accents, and they all had skateboards and tattoos. And then I also did Sim Animals, which was like, I recorded literally, I had 5 actors that were all animal specialists. And we used to bring them in, and I'd say, okay, today we're doing dogs. And the dog guy would come in, and I'd say, okay, here we have these animations. And they'd do it. And then we got to rabbits. And the same guy who did dog did rabbits. And he's like, what sounds do rabbits make? And I was like, I don't know. We got to come up with it. And we made rabbits make sound, but they don't really make sound. They only make sound when they're freaked out. So we had a little license there. But raccoons, possum, skunk, everything. And it was like getting people to be like in that zone of trying to direct them into being skunk, into being possum. And some went there, some didn't. It was like I had a lot of work to do to keep. I had to design all the sounds for these animals, and it was fascinating. I mean, it's actually really fun. But a lot of hard work. It's just really, really intense. But worthy work when you think about people playing the games, because people love it. And here's the client list for Earprint. British Museum, the Met, Smithsonian, Guggenheim, Getty, SF MoMA, Dallas Cowboys. Did you know they have a great art collection? So in the stadium, they have an art collection. And we created the tour of the art collection, and there's world-renowned artists in the Dallas Cowboys. We also interviewed Jerry Jones and Gene Jones, and it's just crazy. They're totally into this art in the stadium thing. But anyway, there's the Exploratorium, Alcatraz Cruises, Oakland Museum, Winchester Mystery House, parks. So I do that because I'm trying to say, like, if you're looking at careers in this field, there's a way to do it, and there's a way to get access to these kinds of places and to do the kind of work that we do in different kinds of environments. And I chose museums, and these are some of the best museums to work with, and the collections are amazing, and I did audio tours and soundscapes. And then I got a job also at a company in Australia, and they were doing interesting things, and I just got laid off a year ago because everything changed, COVID, everything. And getting laid off from a sound design job, because let me say this, you get a job as a sound designer in one you want, not just one that's like, I'm doing it for the money, and it's like, this is the job I want for the rest of my life. I don't want to have to look for another job, I get a salary, it's hard enough. And I thought I had it. But it didn't, they had to lay me off because the work slowed down, and I had to, there wasn't a way to adapt a sound designer into other fields. I did all the sounds for this company for 4 years, and then they were like, we're going to hire, we're going to do contractors from now on, so we're going to let you go. But anyway, so what did I do? I went back to Earprint, and I am now very, 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 very busy doing sound design and media. I'm a media specialist. So if you do sound, you have to be willing to do something else too. So if you're a programmer, you can do sound and programming. If you're a light artist, you can do sound and light. If you're a filmmaker, you can do sound and film. I kind of chose to do media specializing because I can do design things. I create interactives. I create immersive experiences. So immersive experiences are what we're going to look at in my portfolio, which we'll do next. But I just kind of want to give you a sense of like where I come from, where I'm going, and what matters to me, because it has mattered my whole life, and I've gone through all these different experiences. And here I'm trying to say, look at me. I do VR. See the VR guy? And I say, look at me. I do cool, weird sound, anechoic chamber stuff. I'm looking at the pictures below. I do interactives with a mobile phone. I do, what's that thing over on the right? Don't really know, but it's a weird mic. So I'm trying to project an image of sound, interesting things, etc. And you kind of have to market yourself, and you have to figure out what you're doing, and then you have to figure out what it looks like and tastes like and sounds like, and you have to write about it. You can't give up on that stuff, because sound itself, you can't really put it on a web page. You can't just put a sound on a web page. I wish we could, but you have to write about it. You have to frame it. So that's how I did it. But the word immersive is a word that describes my work because it's immersive experience for the ear. So first off, though, you were talking about trains, right? When my favorite sound comes up, this is how I describe. This is also my art. This is my art, not my work. Okay. This is when I was at Colorado College. I had just learned how to do music concrete. And I said, I'm going to do a huge music concrete piece. I'm going to record sounds, and it's all going to be tape loops. And I chose trains because I love trains, right? This whole thing of what's your favorite sound? Trains. They're just, and this is what I say, they're large, beautiful mechanical creatures. They're moving, they're moving musical instruments, like you were saying. They're moving. They have this dynamic quality of, and within the sounds, I'll say within all sounds, you have melody, harmony, and rhythm. So exploring those can be really exciting after you've recorded them. But the sounds squealing, thumping, tooting, rumbling, singing, distant, mournful, right? Kind of getting at this quality of what is it that you feel when you see a train. A lot of people feel similar things, even if they've never ridden a train. They look at a train and it's just like this, it carries it has weight, and it carries a kind of a legacy of story. For me, I feel romantic, melancholy, and soulful. So the next question after you ask the question about favorite sounds is, how far will you go to share that love of your sound? How far will you go? Like, I love trains. And so I decided that I was going to write a piece of music for sounds of trains and saxophones, because I play saxophone, right? So, and then I'm going to do it on tape, and I'm going to submit it to a contest. I'm just going to do everything I can to get this out there. And all those steps, this is a 1 minute 38 second piece of it, but here you go. So that's basically recording of a train all over Colorado to the Front Range, and then going back to my studio, listening, just listening to the sounds, diving in, listening, speeding them up, slowing them down, reel-to-reel tape. It's all we had. I was not sampling. I did not have a sampler at the time. They didn't exist. So I was using tape. And the amazing quality of sound that you can have when you speed something up or slow it down on analog tape, it never loses the quality, it never loses its depth. It just goes down. It just pitches down. But you don't lose anything like you would with a sampler. And so I listened to it like on the lowest 3.5 IPS, inches per second. And I listened to it at 30 IPS. So I was listening to a range of, multitude exponential range of high and low. And at one point, the sound I recorded was the sound of a rumbling engine passing, and it was actually singing the blues. I'm serious. The melody went like this. Do, 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 do. Wouldn't have known it, because when I was recording, it was going, it was like the low end. Speed it up, and all of a sudden it's this beautiful melody. And it was literally the blues scale, and I'm just like, wow. The moment that I was aware of that, it completely changed my life, because I'm like, I didn't know that I was going to find that, and I didn't know if I would find anything. But the fact that I found this thing that I could translate into that piece, all the saxophones were playing the melody, and behind it were loops of the horns, and that was only 1 minute and 30 seconds of a 20-minute piece, where the train comes from way far away and arrives and then passes and then leads off into the distance. So that's how far I went, right? It's like that's what I cared about, and I feel like I found something that really was meaningful in this. It was an idea, and then it became something extremely powerful for me. And I'm going to take this piece and put it into a 3-screen immersive experience, and hopefully do another train series of concerts and lectures and stuff. So I'll keep you posted. But trains I listen to trains all the time, and they're fabulous. There's so much music in them. So I want to keep going. How much time do we have? So 10 minutes, okay. We got this. I'm going to run through it. So you'll remember this, Brenda? Liz Keim put together the train celebration weekend. It was so fun. So I debuted my piece live with 3 saxophone players and tape, and it was really fun. And the Exploratorium did some amazing things back then, because they had all this new music, all these incredible artists coming through. People think of it as a science museum, but it's a museum of science, art, and human perception. And it's just the most amazing place. It changed my life. So my life, up to the point lived at the Exploratorium. Up to the point where I worked at the Exploratorium was like, I had a standard education, I learned music theory, I liked to play music. Then I went to the Exploratorium, and I learned about electromagnetism and light. I learned about artists using these incredible phenomena to create expressive and deep, meaningful works of art, and it was like an awakening. So I had this awakening, and it's lived with me ever since. It's really why I pursued the work I'm doing, was because of the influences and the connections and the experience I had there. So now we're going to fast forward. You guys know what APEC was or is? I asked AI. But the reason I'm talking about this is because it relates to trains again. I decided last year that I was going to do another train piece, and for APEC, I was asked to participate in an immersive experience for APEC at the NTT, and I wanted to try to do something with trains and the 20 APEC nations. It's like the ring of, what do they call it? Anyway, it's the countries, the Pacific Rim, what it's called. So the Pacific Rim countries, they're all up South American coast, North American coast, Alaska, Russia, all the way down the Asian countries and back. And those countries are all connected through this APEC. There was a big conference last November, and I participated in it with an AI artist. She made these large AI-generated pictures of the places. We chose 12 different countries. And we had see this little thing up to the left there? That's a diagram of the room we got to use. It's tear-shaped. And the middle of it, see the circle over there? That's an enclosed, immersive, that's about 10 feet wide, and it's an enclosed, immersive room with 8K projectors. And the outside is a glass wall that also has projection on it. So it's like this crazy, wild, immersive experience place. And we designed this in about a month. So we kind of had a pretty crazy schedule. But we put it together. It looked like this, okay? So we were like, you're going to this vestibule, and you're riding a train to these countries. And it's static. You're not seeing anything move, okay? But the sound takes you through a whole set of places. And it's relatively like the Day of Sound kind of thing, where you're moving through different sound worlds. This is like moving through different sound countries. So that's Canada. And all the art is AI generated. And so I was like, well, if you're going to use AI, I better use some AI. How many of you guys are doing AI? A couple? Okay, so I hardly know anything about AI. Okay? But I like to pretend that I do. And I like people to think I do, because that's how you get ahead, right? You say things. You say, I know all about AI. And people say, oh, cool, let's hire that guy. But then you have to prove it. And this is an opportunity to at least do it. And sound for AI for me is like, I know when I was doing the train piece, I was extrapolating melody, harmony, and rhythm from the train sounds, and I heard that blues melody, and I was like, there's something here. So I want to do that with AI. That's my plan. That's what I'm doing now. That's how I'm using AI. Listening to sounds, and then extracting elements of the sound into music, or extracting musical elements and turning them into other ways of hearing them. Because a lot of the musical qualities are deep within a sound, and you have to kind of draw them out. And so the question is how you draw them out. The earlier technique with analog was to slow it down, speed it up. With AI, you can do all this stuff. Digital. This is the setting, and this is the room that had the interior room and the exterior room. So we had these projections going on both walls. And the sound was just on the interior room. And there we are. It was a big event. All the people from APEC. That's Fiona Ma, the San Francisco treasurer. I was so happy to get a picture with her. And Willie Brown was there, and all these people. People came into this installation from all over the government. So again, measure of success, the state of California is in my place. Okay, bear with me. I'm gonna share a newsreel. This is the
motorcades, crowds, and enthusiasm filled the streets of San Francisco. While the spotlight may be on key leaders rolling into town, there's also a focus on other key players shaping the future.
We wanted to highlight and showcase the innovative spirit as well as the entrepreneurial spirit that is the DNA of the state of California.
As part of the APEC Summit, Global SF hosted its program with a message. The future starts in California, a place boasting it's open for business.
Part of that innovation has been around solar panels, electricity storage, making sure that we are moving toward electrification. The innovation economy has been a huge player in that.
Aiming to reduce the effects of climate change while building up in biotech. Fueling it, in part, is artificial intelligence.
It's a steam train coming.
Something seen in these 12 images from across the APEC region. Aboard an artificial train, artists created the pictures and sounds using words and the help of AI.
It can really help me express a vision and do something that's really meaningful.
Proof of what you can do by engaging and exploring.
It's like a collaborator, a partner. I think of it as a friend. I think other people might think, it's going to take over the world. I don't think of it that way. I think of it more like something that's going to enhance my own perception.
And the perception of San Francisco.
But, the reason I like to play that, again, is because measures of success, if you get on the news, people probably take you more seriously or something, or they look at you and go like, what the hell is he talking about? Because you have to say something, and I said that. I truly believe it. What I said was, AI is a collaborator, and I'm an optimist, so I'm an AI optimist. Does everybody, you know what I'm talking about? Who here is an AI optimist? Okay, do we have any pessimists? Okay, it's all valid, but we're forced with a choice, which is to believe in the good if you can, and the fact is it's just a tool. So back to that, the next thing that, the way I used AI, I'm gonna share a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm just gonna kind of run through it. But the whole way that I used AI was like to use train sounds, and the sounds come from each of those countries. So I found sounds from each of those regions. I then put them through a max patch that Josh actually created. I collaborated with my son on it. Awesome. And it reads the sound, and it extrapolates the musical components of it in terms of pitch, rhythm, and harmony, and then it spits out MIDI notes. And you can dial in all the parameters and the sensitivity and the things like that, and it produces these tracks. They're like MIDI tracks. And man, it is crazy, right? It's like I put in a train sound and I get this thing. And the question is it really coming from the train sound? No, you listen to it and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't sound like a train, But anyway, it's generative, so it's generating these MIDI sounds. And I layered those onto these sound designs that are basically a portrait of a place. So, I'm going to share just a bit of it, just to get the idea. We start in San Francisco and go through, but you won't hear the AI is mixed way down because it's not prominent. I don't want it to be prominent, but it's part of the mix. And I'll kind of point it out. Where are we now? San Francisco. Canada. Hear that little aura of background sound? That's the AI. Japan. I'm afraid we don't have a lot of time to listen to the whole thing. But as an immersive experience, you go in that space and you can just be surrounded by it. And the quality of experience is the sound carries the whole experience because you're not seeing anything move, but you do have this feeling of being transported. And each of the places has signature sounds of the area. So and just a quick note about where did I find those sounds? Did I go to those areas and record? No, but I actually donated $100 to a water project. And the benefit of that was this guy said, I'm going to give you access to 500 gigabytes of sounds recorded all over the world, royalty free. And I'm like, $100 for a good cause? Gets me 500 gigabytes of sound? Awesome. So it's out there, right? The kind of thing, the BBC just opened up their entire library of sounds. Sounds are kind of the thing that are they're communal, but they're also proprietary. So anyway, sounds of the place mapped with sound design of the place, mapped with an AI layer that listens to the sound of the train and layers in this melody. So this is something we can look at a little deeper if you want to stick around. But I don't want to go too much. But this up here is the patch, the Max patch. How many of you use Max? MSP? It's very powerful. But it is a machine learning program. It's not technically, AI is machine learning, so the definition of AI is something we should all be aware of. And Ableton Live, which is basically taking the sound from Max, routing it through a MIDI channel, and I'm assigning instruments. So I have a lot of agency here. I'm choosing which parameters to focus on when I'm putting the sound into Max. I'm also choosing the sound I want to output. So it's a collaborator. I'm using AI, but I'm also participating with it in a way. And the effect is like when I did the train piece and I found the blues melody, I'm finding all this real joy in what that's creating. And it isn't me. It's not me. I'm not generating these layers. They're generative. So it's a different relationship, but I do think it's a powerful one, and we should explore it as the positive end of things without letting it be like, it's never really going to make your piece of music. I don't think that's even to me, that's not that interesting. But relationships with it in our work can be very powerful. Okay, what are we doing next? Okay. How much time do I have? Yeah, so I'm just going to riff through. I'm not going to play sounds. This is a piece, a museum piece that is basically showing the. I'm going to show you the room. This is the artwork is commissioned by a Scottish traveler merchant who decided he wanted to take a little bit of China home with him after he traveled there. So he commissioned a piece of work, which is an entire room of wallpaper. So it's an immersive experience from the 1750s. And what we did is create a soundscape for it that brought the sounds of China and matched them with the sounds of Scotland, with an erhu. These are some of the technical things, Little Myers, speaker pods. Recorded this amazing bagpipe player. Anybody geeking on mics, that's a Sennheiser 418S and two Sheps and an Ambio. And this wonderful Chinese, these were all recorded in the places where the exhibit was, and I'll play maybe just a teeny bit of it. Come on. Let's move on. Sorry. If you want to stick around, if you want to hear more. And here's just like patches. This is the Immersive software patch that is basically just Max. But it's very powerful and it's super helpful. Okay, another job, Winchester Mystery House, Halloween. This is only 30 seconds though. This is fun stuff. So this is a job I did for art processors. But I did all the video, the initial video that you're seeing in those oval windows. That was the work I did collaborated with the West Office Design and Exhibit firm. But we edited the video so that it was coming out of these Tiffany glass panes that were part of the collection. And the story of Sarah Winchester was broadcast onto that. And then this Halloween version of it was like the paranormal forces come in and mess it all up. So it's sort of like this weird thing that when I get involved in a project, it has a lot of, the possibility of the relationship continuing is always there. And when it does, it evolves. Something changes. It's always interesting to see how that happens, especially with something like the Winchester Mystery House, which is like the last place I had ever thought I would work. Has anybody been there? Okay. And you know that it's like a lot of people go there. It's one of the most popular attractions in America. So it's just really, I find work wherever I get to it, and I get really weird opportunities like that, but they're great. I'm just going to show a few slides, and then we're going to stop and have Q&A, if I can make my thing work. Maybe that's a message. Should I just stop? Yeah. How about I get, oh, there we go. I'm just going to show a few pictures because we can. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see anybody, so this could be a little weird. Very bright. Hello. Let's start with you there.
The train that you used in the APIC, was
Yeah.
it, the train that was used in the APEC, was that one train or was it trains from each of those locales?
Train from each locale. So the trains, the license I kind of gave myself on the trains was that in San Francisco, I used some trains that were in the United States. But I found train sounds in this collection and from all over, from those places, and they all had a different sound. And Asia is full of trains. I mean, if you ever, that's why I looked at AI, because I'm like, what's going on in Asia with trains? And it's just like, they're really into progressive, new, fast trains, and they have old ancient trains, and they're all systems that are integrated. So there's a lot of different cultural resonances with transportation. And part of what I wanted to do is to talk about that. Like, you know, what is the significance of trains and the economic, the climate? You know, people are like, threw away all the trains in order to bring in cars. Are we going to go back to trains? You know, these are very, so for me, it's like, I feel a sense of train love it's soul. It's like there's something deeply satisfying about it, but it also connects to this incredible network of stuff.
I find it very interesting to hear what you've done.
You power it on.
I'm just wondering if you teach anywhere, like as a regular basis.
That's a good question. I at a certain point, so my mom was a teacher. She was a professor. She showed me what teaching was like in the university setting, and I got a very, very bad impression. I grew up feeling like it's a struggle. Like you know, you look. She was a single mom in the 60s and 70s. She had a PhD in history from Berkeley. She struggled so hard to get a job, right? So I came through it. I value education so much, but I decided I didn't want to be a teacher. And I had a lot of reasons for it. My mom wanted me to go to graduate school, and I said, no, I don't want to go to graduate school. And she's like, you have to go to graduate school. I said, no, I don't. And it was a very, you know, for anybody trying to navigate your own future, and your parents are saying, you have to do this, you're like almost obliged to say no, right? And here's my mom saying, it's the only way to go, it's the safe way to go, you'll be a great teacher. And I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't go that track. So instead I worked at the Exploratorium and got involved in some crazy stuff. And my mom was like, Jason, it just appears that you're drifting, you know? I was like, yes, and I'm having a really good time drifting. I'm learning about life, and I'm learning, you know. Of course, I went through a lot of major difficulty. The life of an artist, the life of somebody aspiring to do crazy stuff and try to survive is difficult. But the point that I'm making is that's how I chose to do it. But I chose to be in public education, and my mom was also a public educator. So what I said is, you know, I'm not going to be a teacher in the academic ivory tower, nor am I going to be a person who's in the industry, the ad industry, the music business. Those things didn't appeal to me. Instead, I went for museums where it was like public education, public installations, public access, and people of all kinds. And that way, you know, the teaching happens all the time. I learn all the time because every project I have is like a new exploration. It's always interesting, always about topics like art, history, you know. And so anyway, that's my answer. I'd love to teach. I want to teach more like this than in a classroom necessarily. I want to teach by going out into the field and listening. I want people to hear what I have to say and tell somebody else, you know. So really, that's where I feel most comfortable. And I don't know how to. I mean, I'm happy to be a participant in this because what I really want to do is create a public education institution called the Sound Museum. And I want to create the Institute of Sonostalgia so that becomes a reference point for all of this, you know. And it's not me. It's not that I'm trying to make it for my own accomplishments, but I want to try to give back and try to create something like the Exploratorium for sound, where you can go in and learn all about all of its aspects and hear music and explore instruments and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's my dream. Thank you for asking the question. I'd love to be a teacher, though.
Other questions?
Hmm?
I'm wondering what AI tools and models were incorporated to the APEC project that you showed for us.
So the program we used was Max MSP, and it was basically, I'll have to do a little bit of looking. It uses a certain kind of machine learning algorithm that I have to find. Okay. Can I read it? No. Let me just do this real quick. Anyway, I don't know if let's look at it maybe later if you want super details, but it's an algorithm that was developed through to extract frequencies from, I don't know how it works. So you're not talking to somebody who knows anything about AI, right? I asked my son to create this. He's a Max MSP, deeply knows how to do it. And I can't answer your question, but I'm trying. And there is a little note here that says something about it. So if you want to follow up, but so I just want to say, who really knows about AI? I mean, I know that I want to have a relationship with it. I don't want to go into the box and learn about how to actually code, but I want to learn how a human being stays a human, does humanitarian work, and uses AI. Because it isn't about the machine doing what I can't do. It's more about my relationship to it and how I want to use it to express. Because I'm looking back and going like, I wanted to do this and tape. I still want to do it, and AI is a way better way to go right now, and it saves time. I mean, how many of you guys have cut tape? All right. I used to clean up blood. My job was to clean up blood from the splicing block because you had to use a razor blade and cut tape, and people are exhausted in their late night shift to make their music composition, and they'd cut themselves. And it's that tactile, and you had to rock the reels to get the sound, and you had to have this kind of, it's physical, So it's now not physical, and the tool, what I'd really love to do is have a conversation with a programmer. Are you an AI programmer? Or because I think this idea that I'm after needs to have more depth. This is a really simple machine learning model. It's not doing, say, what other AI models are doing. I've experimented with a lot of doing stems, like I did a project where I was demonstrating the AI that was available online and stuff, and I pulled down all these programs, and I pulled down all these tracks, just music tracks, and I put them all through the thing to see how they did. Like, how does it stem? Because stemming, you know what I'm talking about, right? Piece of music, the mix, and you throw it into an AI module, and out comes drums, piano, voice, bass. And I'm like, that's cool. I want that, right? I want to try that. And it's like you put all these different kinds of mixes from the 50s, from all the way up through today, and put them into the AI model that strips out the stems, and you're like, it's not really working, but it's working enough to be interesting, but it's, so it's kind of like, where are we with it? That was a year ago, right? And I haven't done anything with AI since, because I don't have a reason to. I'm not compelled to do that. So I would like to talk to everyone who's using AI, say, what is it that compels you to use it? What have you learned? What can we learn from what you're doing to understand more about it? And the Exploratorium's having an AI show in the summer, this coming summer, and it's going to be asking questions about some things. I've had conversations with people about Pandora. Pandora is an AI module, right? It's an AI algorithm. Did you know that? So some people may not, but it's doing what AI does. And it's like, how many things are actually AI that we already know about? How many things are AI that we don't know about and are just happening? So I don't know. Those are the questions I have. I'm sure you guys are way ahead of me. But I like what I was able to do with this because it generated music outside of myself. And I'm looking for that because I feel like there's a point where I don't want to have to come up with everything. And it's not because I'm lazy. It's just because I'm not sure that this body, this mind, this creative spirit can come up with everything. I want a collaborator. That's why I love playing with other people, and you play off of each other. And so I find that that's what I'm using it for. It's a friend. It's a collaborator. It's like another musician in a band. And there's people doing things like that that are kind of interesting. And so there's a lot of. Does that answer? Hopefully that gets. I'll never be able to get technical about it, but I am interested in it.
Any other questions?
I'm really curious about the Sound Museum and would, love to visit when you have it all done. But do you have plans, where and how soon it would, come?
It's kind of right here right now. But I do have a partner, and he's on the East Coast, and we are slowly finding a path, because every time I talk about this with people who are actually people who make museums and do things, they say, like, slow down, one thing at a time. You know, really just take a breath and stop projecting, because I've been projecting all my life for 30 years. When I first started working at the museum, of the Exploratorium, I wanted to make a sound museum, and I looked around and went, I don't even know how museums work. How could I possibly do it? So I spent 30 years learning how museums work, right? So I have this track record, and I have all these people I know, and I'm asking them, like, what do you think? What do you think? How it would work? So I see it as two major components. One is the Institute of Sonostalgia, which has no place, and one is the Museum of Sound and Space. And my friend came up with that, and I'm like, that's cool. It's also it's a funny thing. He works at the Smithsonian, so it's kind of like air and space, but no, sound and space. And the idea, though, is space is as important as sound when you're dealing with sound, because as we all know, sound bleeds and doesn't have a focus, and the space has to accommodate for that. So we want to design a space that can accommodate and demonstrate new forms of technology and new ways of organizing space, so that sound is a better perceived, better appreciated, more human scale, more intricate, you know, more all the details that we can imagine that we can't right now. Because, you know, I'm talking through a microphone and it's booming all over the place, and there's companies like Meyer Sound that are creating these things where you just stand in a room and everybody can hear you. And it's like, I want to know how to do that. And why don't we all have that now? And it's just going to take a while, but the Sound Museum could be the focus of that kind of research. So it does have a place. It doesn't have anywhere yet. That's real, but I'm crossing my fingers. Anybody have any ideas? Go ahead. Yeah. I'm only kidding, actually, but I would like to get together with a group of people and say, like, what do you think a Sound Museum could be, right? But anyway, what was your question?
I want to thank you first for coming, and I'm so glad I made it, because this has been fascinating for me. This is a technical question. The year in sound for the NPR piece, so you had 50 tapes, so you had 50 one-hour tracks, and then you mixed that all down to how many minutes, and how long did it take you?
I had 1 minute.
In 1 minute?
No, so instead of an hour long,
1 minute.
That would have been impossible.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So I said to the people, I said,
minute.
send me your tapes, tell me what time it is, and record for a minute. And so some people recorded, I recorded, for example, midnight, and that, you know, I had all these events. The whole day, my partner and I went around all over the Bay Area and recorded sounds, and it was like the time of day is important, but a short amount. It's not like, so it's more sort of a random moment, but with a focus of the recordist. The recordist is the filter, and the recordist goes out and says, well, I'm going to start here and end here, but only give you a minute. So I had all these minute-long sounds, and some of them were 2. Got some shorter ones, you know. But it was like they all just kind of came in that way. And so less decision on my part of what part to choose, because I didn't want to, I'm not like I'm the person, the channel through which it flows, not the decider. So all I had to do was take that sound, put it in line with all the sounds that happened near it, you know. It was really fun. It was like Lego music or something, Lego sound, because I just plugged it in. The tricky thing was crossfading, because as you heard in this piece, there's a lot of crossfading, and that was actually a conversation I had with Bob Boylan at NPR. He's like, hey, I really like this idea, but it's kind of weird. It's kind of not working for me, because I want more continuity. I want to hear the sounds come and go. I want to hear the fade. So I was like, okay, well, let's do that. So I did a mix of that, and he's like, yes, that's what I like. So this one had like minutes were overlapping. It's condensed, really short. In the CD, it's not that way as much, because the sound is much more like, here's a sound, it goes longer. This was only 4 minutes, and it was many minutes together. So it was, you know, anyway, it's hard to describe, but it's like those kind of construction projects are really fun, because when I pull myself out of the composition process, it's just happening. And like, I had such a fun time, because this was when it was all mail, right? I had to get these padded envelopes in the mailbox from Japan, from New Zealand, from Germany, from all over the place. A lot of people from America or the Bay Area, because that's where I was easily able to communicate. But they kept coming in, and I'd just be like, it was DAT, so digital audio tape, and I did it on a computer, but there wasn't any digital communication. So there was no internet. 96, I mean, I think I got I had a laptop. No, I had a little Apple. You know, it was like, anyway, there was not a way to use what we could do today, which is like you can talk to anybody anywhere and get everybody uploading to a site on Google Drive or whatever. None of that happened. It was by mail. I still have the tapes. I still have the envelopes that they came in, because I'm a hoarder, so pardon me. But I still have all the cassettes I've ever had. So anyway, cassettes are coming back, too. So anyway, does that answer your question? That's a good question. I did a 72-minute version for a CD. I did a 30-minute version, which was performed live at the Sound Culture event at Oakland Museum, which I think, were you there? And then there was the 4-minute version, and there was a 2-minute version, and there was an 8-minute, you know, I kind of just did these kind of random elements, and then I had to choose, like, because the whole idea is I didn't want to have to choose or omit. Some sounds I was like, that doesn't sound like anything. You know, I couldn't tell what it was. It was like, I love the sounds too. They're like, I had no idea what it was, but it was the sound of I think it was a shovel scraping the ground. And I'm like, that's a cool sound. But nobody said what it was, just what time it was. So it was kind of this really interesting exposure to a process where, you know, it's a little bit like I'm influenced by John Cage, I'm influenced by chance operations, and I started to get more and more into that when I realized how much control I wanted to have over sound. I wanted so much control, I wanted to make it perfect, I wanted it to be this thing. I realized I don't really like that anymore. I want to just, so there's all these ways that we can do that. I did a whole set of pieces where I used the runes to organize a structure. I called them word pieces, and I would record pages and words. A page is a long phrase, and a word is a short phrase, and I'd put them together in these randomly chosen, basically randomly chosen arrangement, and if a rune was upside down, that got reversed. And it would just be this incredible discovery. Because I was in it, I was the one recording, I was the one making up the phrases and the actual content, but I wasn't in charge of. And then also, anytime I wanted to, I could go like, I'm gonna change that. You know, like there's this point where whether you're really strict to a system. With the Day of Sound, I wouldn't have put like, you know, 1:02 p.m. After 1:03 p.m. I wouldn't do that ethically, right? But with my own compositions, I'm like, I made this up. I can do whatever the hell I want. But there's something wonderful about having a structure and following it. So I recommend that to all of you. It's like, just do some random, you'd be amazed. Like stuff comes out of you that you're like, I didn't create it. Something else happened. So I really, that's one maybe behind all of this is that feeling. And I'll end with that. There's a feeling of like, trust in the process, and trust the creative process, and trust your life process. Because, you know, I've been to the bottom of I felt like everything was done, and it wasn't. So it keeps cycling, and I just want to leave that with you guys. Like, just keep at it. Don't not show up.
Thank you.
Yeah.